to the Upshot, Ulti-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. It is Tuesday, September 20th, and Josh and I are in a better mood because our football teams won the damn games this weekend.
Nathaniel Hackett is a problem. Denver has averaged double-digit penalties and over 100 yards every game, to the point the fans were chanting the play clock out for Russell Wilson while they're on the field. It's bad. It's bad. Things are not great in Denver right now. Granted, I think I still prefer them over San Francisco.
Whoa, okay. Let me just put it out there.
Okay,
Broncos 49ers coming up this weekend.
That's true.
Okay, so on Thursday, we'll place our bets, etc. We'll talk over under something like that. But I will say I already took the teaser on the opening line for the Niners. They opened at plus 2.5. I teased it to 8.5. Feeling great about that. And listen, I don't know how you can say you'd take them over the 49ers. Yes, Trey Lance is out for the season. It is disappointing. It hinders us in the future, 2-3 years down the road. But right now, in 2022, the 49ers are a better football team.
I agree with that.
Jimmy Garoppolo is back at quarterback position.
I think that Denver's woes can be resolved before the end of the season, enough to possibly make a wild card run. I think that even if you guys make the wild card, you're going to go out early. Sorry, Jimmy G. It's not.
We're going to blast the Broncos into oblivion this week. I can't wait. Let's get to some disc golf. We had the start of the Disc Golf Pro Tour playoffs, whatever that means. We'll talk about that. And it was the Green Mountain Championships up in Vermont, Josh's favorite tournament of the year, World's 2023 preview. And we watched Ricky Wysocki nearly give it away, but comes back and gets the win on the final hole after leading by 5 strokes going into the back 9. Looked like it was going to be an easy walkaway victory. And Kristin Tattar dominant again. It was a Kristin versus Henna battle again. And those two players have been the best pair of players this last month or so. So lots to get to today. And I think we should start with Ricky and his win. Obviously, coming off of the disappointing Worlds, big time bounce back performance. He owns this tournament. He just absolutely owns this tournament. He's won here more than anybody. And once again, round 2 looked amazing at Fox Run, handled Brewster very effectively, and was able to fight through some poor play in the final few holes of the back 9 of the final round in order to come away a winner over Chris Dickerson.
We got to give Nicholas Antila just a quick props. 11 under in that weather, incredible round.
Yes.
But that Ricky's round, while not great, was pretty. Everybody near the top struggled at this tournament. I don't know if the conditions were getting worse as the day was going on. It kind of appeared. It was kind of off and on. It was really shifting conditions. But Ricky shoots the 3 under, Mattia with a 5, Isaac Robinson with a 3, and Chris Dickerson with the 2 under. So nobody up there at the lead was really shooting an incredible round. But when you have that 5-stroke lead to play with, I think for most of the round, Ricky was feeling pretty comfortable. It wasn't until hole 14, which I know we're going to talk about, that you really have Ricky panicking, that this is getting well within now a margin of uncomfortability.
Yeah, well, let's talk about what happened.
Yeah.
I was sort of an uneventful round for the most part to that point. I think a lot of people probably turned it off. And then we get to 14, and it's the little kind of like right to left hole, long shot, and then you just finish up into the woods. It's not an easy hole necessarily, but it's a pretty straightforward shot. Most players take kind of like a line drive, swing it out a little bit over the OB on the right side, and then let it skip up into the green on the left. And, you can get a little unlucky, or you can get a little lucky with the way the trees kick your disc around once you get onto the green. Ricky sends his drive a little too far wide right, and it's looking like it might find the out of bounds, and it's getting some ground play right by the line, and it hits an umbrella that was propped up against one of the stakes, and it was inbounds, along with a tall boy beer can, also inbounds. And so the disc looks like maybe it's going to go OB. It's going to be close. I mean, I don't think you can definitively say it was definitely going out of bounds. It was definitely staying in bounds. It was going to be a borderline situation, and the umbrella keeps it safe. And so everyone's like, oh my gosh, like what? I mean, what could have been if he goes out of bounds? You know, Chris Dickerson's going to pick up maybe 2 strokes. Well, Chris Dickerson still picked up strokes because Ricky went on to miss the circle 2 putt, miss the comebacker and roll out of bounds, and then really smart, super steady decision-making, stays where he is and re-putts from the same spot. He does not go down the hill and putt from the OB, and he ends up taking a double bogey. And all of a sudden, it's a 2-stroke battle. And then Ricky gives away another stroke on the next hole, and he gives away another stroke on the next hole. And it's all tied up going into 17. Now, let's talk about the umbrella thing. We talked about it in our Rapid React show for subscribers. And I kind of want to reiterate the point I made there, Josh. Obviously, the guy who put the umbrella in the beer can inbounds shouldn't have done that. Duh. Don't do that. What are you doing? Why would you do that? Would you put your soda on the court at an NBA game if you're sitting courtside? No. So that was dumb. But the bigger issue to me is we need more clarity around where spectators can be at these tournaments. Now, I've seen some people say online, it was total chaos. There was no crowd control at GMC. And I've seen other people say, including people in our subscriber Discord, who said the marshals were doing a good job. Mm-hmm. For the most part, they were being very clear. They were checking lanyards, and this was just like kind of like a random occurrence from somebody who did something stupid that they shouldn't have been doing. It doesn't matter really what the answer is. To me, the clear thing that I take away from this is that there needs to be a line or a rope or something that keeps spectators back off of fairway OB by at least 5 feet. Now, I'm not saying you need to send people way far away and put them so they can't see. But in disc golf, the flight of the disc, it's not like a ball. It doesn't go in an arc and land in a spot. Mm-hmm. It moves laterally right to left, and using space out over the out of bounds is part of the game. That is an accepted part of the game. In fact, many holes are designed such that you want to do that. Mm-hmm. So we can't have people standing right on the OB with their umbrellas, you know, whether they're lying on the ground inside the OB or they're just up over their head. You're taking away airspace that is going to potentially be used. We cannot have people that close to the out of bounds on shots where there is like it's relevant. Right. If you want to put people tight to the OB in areas where like pros are never going to end up, or like, you know, the only way they end up there is because they throw a horrendous hyzer and it like skies and, you know, whatever, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But where there's like playable active OB lines, you can't have people standing right on the line. And I think that's on the tournament organizers, not on the random dude who did something dumb.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think it's a really easy solution is you just have, if you've got stakes, for example, you need to have, whether it's the rope, whether it's just spray paint on the ground, a color that designates if this color is on the fairway, you must be at least 10 feet back from the OB. That's it. Like because I think it's a fair point that
paint a second line.
And it's a fair point that in earlier rounds, especially, you have players following different cards or are in different areas that are not lead card where there's the most congestion. Where there's the most congestion, you should always have marshals. You should always have people who are crowd control and designated for that role. Now, with those other cards though, you need to have some designators so that if I'm watching third card or fourth card, that I also know where that line is so that it's a fair kind of standard of play for every player. That even if I am not on lead card and there is a crowd control person there telling me to back up, that I have a clear line. You then just have some marshals roaming. And if you are not obeying spectator rules in the same way that if I was standing on the fairway,
pull your pass.
Take a Sharpie, write a mark on it. The first time you're seen inside of the spectator OB, second time you flip it over, it's already there. The pass is gone. They go, right? Now you have very effective mechanisms of fans being encouraged to police themselves, and it creates that fair standard of play for everybody so that third card doesn't have to do with spectators in tight where lead card gets them back 10 feet.
I mean, it's actually comical how often out of bounds, like water bottles, umbrellas, cans, fans come into play at these tournaments. Like it is multiple times a season. And this one didn't really matter. It didn't. I've seen people say, Ricky, if he'd gone out of bounds, would have made the putt. I mean, I don't know about that, but maybe.
Yeah.
He would be more focused on the importance of the putt at that point, certainly. I think, the umbrella obviously did not cause him to take a 5 on the hole. So it doesn't really matter in this context. But to me, this is just one more time that we are seeing this happen where it's like, okay, we need to actually solve this problem. We can't just have people willy-nilly, wherever they want, up on tight to the OB. When the OB line, it's not like golf where if the player hits the ball out of bounds, they hit it out of bounds. Like, that's it. There's no, like, the player is, I mean, I guess it could happen where it knocks off of somebody and then rolls back in bounds, but like, OB lines in golf are also way further from the like bad areas, right? So there's rough, and then there's like deep rough, and then way over there's OB. But golfers don't go out of bounds all that often.
Great. So
anyway, you get the point, Josh. I don't think we need to talk about it more. It didn't really affect the competition here. Let's talk about 17.
Real quick before 17, I want to add one other quick note. I do not care about spectators in the field of view of players. Zero care. Zero care. It's a professional sport. It is a viewer and spectator driven sport now. Pros have to learn that there are going to be people standing in their line of view where they're going to throw. It should not affect the disc, but I don't care if there are people in their line of view.
Honestly, I don't think most pros even care. I think they complain after the fact when they throw a bad shot.
I think you're right.
They use it as an excuse.
Yeah.
But I completely agree. I think we should do as much as we can to keep fans tight to the action. I think it's fun. I think it's, it's a cool part of the sport to be able to see up close, watch the disc fly. I do think there needs to be rules so that there's fair outcomes, and safety also matters.
Yes.
If someone blasts a driver down the fairway and you're standing tight to the OB and you're not paying attention, you could actually get hurt. If you're a little kid. So like, we need to think about that kind of stuff. And to me, this should be a real priority for both the Pro Tour and the PDGA in 2023.
Yep.
Okay, 17, elevated basket, danger behind, not super close, but like you can catch a roll. And Ricky is pretty far outside the circle and he lays up. Chris is a step or two outside the circle. He has an opportunity to make that putt to take the lead going into 18. And Josh, he lays it up. Do you like the decision from Chris to lay up there?
Yeah, I do. I really like, and I mean, there are usually, I feel really strongly one way or the other about these situations usually. And I don't feel super strongly about this one. I feel like if he had run it, I kind of think about the counterfactual. If he runs it and makes it, it's an incredible and exceptional moment of pressure that he lives up the moment to. That still might not matter if he throws the drive he threw in 18. If he runs it and misses it, I feel like I would feel more strongly about yelling about him laying up. And so I think that it's probably the right play. It's just such a treacherous green. It's on a pretty steep slope, elevated basket. Even if he doesn't go OB, you expect him to be circle's edge on a comeback putt uphill towards an elevated basket with Ricky parked underneath. I mean, there is no way the only way that it goes well for him is if he misses short and it drops straight down. Other than that, there is no miss that's really all that favorable for him. And so I think laying up is the right call. You know, there are some who say that Chris Dickerson doesn't play 18 well, which, you know, remember last year he almost gave it away and his disc barely kind of came back in bounds on his drive. So, and then we've also seen, I think it was Worlds. That might not be right.
Chris Dickerson has definitely gone out of bounds on 18 before.
Yeah, there was another tournament this event where he like blasted like 3 or 4 drives all OB in the same spot just out of frustration. I don't remember if it was Worlds or not though. Anyway, Chris Dickerson has gone out of bounds on 18. So there are some who've said, you know, why live to fight another day if your other day is a hole that you're terrible at? That's a fair argument. Again, I just don't feel super strongly about it either way. And I think if that's the play that he felt most comfortable with, I think if he misses that putt and then takes a bogey and then goes to 18 down a stroke, he tries to be even more aggressive, push it. It just goes even worse. So, yeah, that's kind of, there's a no-win situation here.
I don't agree with that.
Really? Okay.
The more I've thought about it, the more I think he should have gone for it.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, he's what, 35 feet? Maybe 38?
Okay, yeah. I'll say 38.
This is one of the great Circle 2 putters of the generation.
Mm-hmm.
He's already hit putts from that distance multiple times within the last 5 holes. Ricky's already conceded that he's going to take par. You're going to 18 where you don't have an advantage over Ricky. And Ricky's already melted down to the point where like now you have this opportunity to win that you totally didn't have 4 holes ago. You have now a chance to maybe win the tournament with this putt and you lay it up. Why? Well, because you're afraid you're going to go out of bounds. So what?
Well, you also just mentioned
you have to have some stone sometimes to go for a putt that's dangerous. And it's not like he was from 60 feet.
Sure.
It's a very makeable putt for Chris Dickerson. And I don't know what the wind was doing right there. Maybe it was really tricky. I think no matter how you explain it to me, why it's the right decision, I still really don't think so. And this is not like retroactive, you know, because he went out of bounds on 18. Obviously, he should have gone for it on 17.
Sure.
I just think like you've come back into this tournament in a totally improbable way. You have all of the momentum and confidence right now. And then you're like, nah, not here. To then know you're going into 18 where you've had some demons. And so I don't like it. I think that Chris Dickerson is a great Circle 2 putter, and I think he should have gone for it.
If I guess the one other point I'll make though is like you said, since hole 13, Ricky's kind of melted and fallen apart and has not been playing his best golf. Maybe Chris is banking on that going into hole 18. That Ricky is not playing his best right now.
He's just going to melt again. And
that he might just throw OB again. Yeah. That's the other thought process. I think, I mean, I see your point. I think it's a completely valid opinion. I really don't.
I might feel differently if Ricky was first on the box ahead of Chris.
Ooh.
But he was not.
Yeah.
Chris was always going to throw first on 18, birdie or par.
Yeah.
And that could actually change the calculus slightly.
And that's true.
But like, it took the pressure off Rick when Chris went out of bounds. Although Ricky almost made the same mistake and kept that OB on the right side, which is the big no-no on that hole.
Because you have to re-tee.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. I mean, let's talk big picture here. I mean, Ricky overall was fantastic this weekend.
Yeah, he was.
And it comes after some controversial comments that we're going to get to in a moment. And he now becomes the first player to get 4 Elite Series and major wins on the year. He is now first in Disc Golf Pro Tour points. He passed Macbeth. And he has now had a 4-win season for the 4th time in his career. And, Ricky, honestly, Josh, it has to be said, after our conversation last week, he's right back, maybe at the top of the Player of the Year conversation. I think certainly in the conversation, because if you have the most wins on tour, you're going to be right there.
Yeah, and now has most wins on tour by double that of Macbeth. And that's the big point, right? It's not that before it was a 1-win difference. And so it was pretty easy to say,
and
yeah,
Macbeth had the Worlds and played great at European Open.
Exactly, right. Now that it's 2 wins, I mean, we talked about this. How much should a Worlds be worth? Probably 2 wins, but certainly not 3. And so that complicates it a lot.
I also think that this entire tournament shows me how much horses for courses is valid part of disc golf, like handicapping and determining who's going to win and play well on a weekend. Chris Dickerson's played terrible for since he came back to tour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, terrible's relative, but he has not been particularly good. And then he comes out and plays awesome. And, Ricky's up and down, but this is a pair of courses where he's been dominant. And here he is again. We're seeing the guys who played well here in the past playing well here again, even though they may not be in their best form coming into the event.
And that's true. I will remind you, over on the FPO side, your horses for courses pick missed the cut. So that just to put a little counterpoint in your argument there, Sarah Hokum did not make the cut this weekend. So
I think we have to talk about Sarah Hokum might just be Father Time coming for her.
It very well could be. Yeah.
But you're right. You're right.
I don't. Just wanted to add that in because, of course, you are now 3 for 3 in picks. Incredible. 3 in a row, 3 tournaments in a row. You've gotten MPO and FPO winners. Man.
I'm just piling up the points, Josh.
I know.
It's the playoffs. You're running out of time, my friend.
The problem is, I think the only way I can win now is if I stop picking Kristin and I pick the winner. Because
we'll have to look at the numbers and settle.
I need a couple. I need a couple perfect podiums in order to get up there.
Yes, that would be huge. We'll get to our picks in a little bit. So yeah, I mean, just another really impressive performance from Ricky, and Dickerson played well. He bogey free on Brewster twice. He's not taken a bogey there since 2020, and he's now clinched a semifinals bye at the Tour Championship. So nice job from Chris Dickerson. And maybe we should look down the leaderboard real quick here. And then I want to talk about what Ricky had to say about Worlds. Who else impressed you this weekend, Josh?
Greg Barsby, you're talking horses for courses. Greg Barsby had another great weekend. And I think it goes into, what I talked about in the Rapid React show. These courses both have, and what I think are so brilliant about them is that distance of the hole is not what matters. It's distance of the landing zone. Because if you outdrive a landing zone, you're very quickly not able or in position for a birdie, even on shorter par fours, like sub 600 par fours. This is especially true at Brewster, but I think it's also true at Fox Run. And there are some holes. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, you got it.
I was going to just add, and there are some holes that require distance for the landing zone, but Greg Barsby, distance is not the key factor here for the overwhelming amount of these courses. And Greg Barsby is one of the best when it comes to just hitting landing zones and throwing in from distance. So
throwing it, dude, this guy's crazy with that. I mean, he's crazy with the throw-ins, and particularly here. I mean, I think he's legitimately somebody you have to consider for a podium spot at Worlds next year.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he won here in 18. He's played well here. Top 10 again. And not that far off the win. He's only 6 strokes back of Ricky.
What was his
And if he didn't take the double bogey on 16, he could have been up there podium / maybe in second place.
Yeah, hole 2 was only a 3 under. He needed better than that, but
So Matty O and Isaac Robinson end up tying Chris Dickerson after Dickerson triple bogeys on 18. He went out of bounds twice. Pretty ugly stuff. But he was kind of in desperation mode after going OB on that right side. Isaac Robinson looking like and continuing to look like one of the most promising young players on tour. Mm-hmm. And Matty O doing his thing, just getting first downs and hanging in there. I mean, he's a great player. So fun to root for. I'm not sure if he's ever going to win one, but he's certainly come close a lot.
Matty O, what a guy. He just, I like Matty O so much. He's so much fun to watch and has so much personality. I also learned on Reddit a fun Matty O fact. He's got a Julio Jones signed disc in his bag. I don't know where or when Matty O walked up to Julio Jones with a disc. I love it though. I think that's incredible.
I think that's what we need, right? Like, disc golfers have discs signed by professional disc golfers. Professional disc golfers have discs signed by other professional athletes.
There we go.
And it's in his bag too. I love that.
Yeah.
He didn't put it on his wall. So yeah, let's talk about what Ricky had to say. I mean, he had some controversial comments and then he backed it up with a win this weekend, got back to first in the Pro Tour standings. So first, let's just listen to what he had to say when he was asked about the World Championships and then the playoffs. Like, what does it mean to be in these playoffs? Listen.
How do you feel about this year's? It's the first time we're going through this format for the final portion of the season. How do you feel about that format?
I'm excited. I think that our sport really needs that. I think that it's kind of weird that our sport, we have 1 week out of the year it determines a world champion. I think it should be more of a season-long thing. As an individual sport, I think that having a semifinals, it's like a basketball series. You don't just show up and play for the world championships like we do this year, like we do normally. You have to earn your way up like a basketball. You play the semifinals and you play, and you work your way up to the finals, and then you have a series to determine who's the world champion, instead of just having a week out of the year like we do. Because a lot of times it turns out that the world champion is the best player in the world, but there's a lot of years that also the world champion isn't the best player in the world. So it's there's a difference between being a world champion and being the best player in the world. There's a big difference, and I think that's got to be something in our sport that's kind of got to change, because I just think that as much as I'm a world champion and I'm thankful for that, I think that you kind of got to separate the two, being a world champion for that one tournament and then being the best player in the world throughout the whole season.
So there you go. Ricky talking about the importance of having a season-long best player, and that we shouldn't call the player who wins the world championships the world champion for winning just one event. Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, I hate this take for a couple of reasons. I think there are some real fundamental problems in Ricky's logic, and that just completely undermine his entire point. Number one, Ricky's argument that he wants a season-long to playoffs to championship victory isn't how it works in any world event anywhere. The way that it works, and this has been mentioned a couple times in our Discord, and I've seen on Facebook and Twitter, both have talked a little bit about this. What Ricky's asking for is a United States Tour Championship, which we have. We have the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship, and that is a accumulation of season-long performance up into a culminating event with playoffs that have cuts in order to get there, and you don't do well enough and you don't make it on to the next round. We can debate the merits of said playoffs or the structure or whether or not we like it, but everything that Ricky is describing is a single cohesive tour-based championship. The problem with that is that even right now, in disc golf's infancy, we don't have a single unified tour worldwide. Europe has a contender tour that is meant to be an alternative for European players who don't come over to the United States and tour. Is it as prestigious? No. Is it as advanced or far along as the United States side? No. That's okay, though. I would highly expect, though, in the future for places like Canada, Europe, Asia, South, like Latin America. I mean, there are different places in the world that could develop their own tours, at which point every tour should probably have some sort of a championship, a culmination of the season-long points. The problem, though, is that when it's a world championship, it's an opportunity where every player from around the world, regardless of where you're from, can come and play in these events, in this event, in order to determine who the world champion is. If you made it just based on season performance and qualification at the Disc Golf Pro Tour, then I think you begin to run into a problem of European contenders and others around the world who want to come over and play in the United States or wherever the world championship is held. But the second point is, he says this as if like it's illegitimate that Paul McBeth is considered the best in the world because he won the world championship. And he gives two reasons for this.
That was definitely the implication.
That's definitely the insinuation that he makes by this statement. There are two problems with his arguments about why. Number one is people are like, well, there's a World Cup, and that's, for soccer, everyone determines this and comes together for the single tournament. And Ricky's like, well, yeah, but they're like pool play and heats. We have 5 rounds in disc golf. It just looks different, right? Like in our sport, it's an individual sport with through multiple rounds. I mean, I guess if Ricky really wants a final 9 back is ordered like for the actual championship round, then whatever. I don't agree, but I think that there is a tournament that is done in the way that disc golf tournaments function that provides multiple and is the longest tournament in our sport in order to establish the legitimacy of a world champion. But secondly, he says, well, teams have to undergo rigorous qualifying processes to get there. I don't disagree per se that the World Championship should have a qualifying process. I think you can have, leagues or tournaments at Europe that create qualifications, leagues and tournaments around the world that create qualification for the World Championship. But here's the problem with the insinuation. Paul McBeth would have qualified. It's not like Paul McBeth is going to miss worlds because Ricky instituted this playoff system, and so therefore McBeth is not a legitimate best in the world. McBeth was right behind him in Disc Golf Pro Tour points and then passes him with this world championship win. I don't know what system other than a European soccer league where they literally don't have a final tournament at the end. Does McBeth not make it to the world championship? And how does that change the results?
Here's the thing. Okay, so a couple things.
Okay.
First of all, I am more sympathetic to what Ricky is trying to sell you here.
Okay.
But definitely he's trying to sell you something. He's trying to sell you that it matters more to win like a lot of Elite Series events than it does to win the world championships.
Sure.
And that is wrong. I'm sorry. But I got to give credit to Ricky. He's been very consistent about this point for a long time. We asked him on the show, you want to be winning consistently week to week, or do you want to win the majors? And he said, I'd rather win consistently week to week. He's been very consistent about this. Here's the issue. You're doing it too. Ricky's doing it too. Why are we comparing this to team sports? Stop. There is no reason to do that. This is not the NBA. We don't have a regular season and then like long playoff tournaments that allow you to have multiple games to sort of reduce the luck factor. No. I mean, the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship is about as lucky of a tournament as you can get. The advantage you get by playing well earlier in the season is that you get to avoid some of the earlier knockout rounds. But it doesn't matter how great you play in the semifinals. Your score's back to even for the finals. And that makes for exciting spectator disc golf, but it also is fluky and random, and Nathan Queen wins the tournament.
Sure.
It's not a team sport. So it's I don't want the comparisons to the NFL or whatever else, baseball. They're just different. Look at the other individual sports. Tennis. What do we care about?
Majors.
Golf. What do we care about?
Majors.
Do they have world championships? Actually, they do. No one cares about them. No one says so-and-so is the world champion. You could be ranked number 1 in the world. People care about that. And you can win the majors. And people really care about that.
Yep.
And the fact is, Ricky isn't winning majors. And I don't care. He has a legitimate point that for somebody to win one tournament out of the year and get to be called the world champion with the pomp and circumstance that ascribes to them feels a little unfair. Like if Ricky maybe even made this point, or I've seen this point made. What if somebody win all of the other tournaments, but they didn't win the worlds? This other person is still the world champion, which makes it sound like they had this incredible season and they're the world champion. There's some truth to that. There is some truth to that. But at the end of the day, the world championship is just the most important major in disc golf. No more, no less. People want to win the Masters in golf. They want to wear the green jacket. It's the most important major in golf. It is what it is. If you don't win the Masters, doesn't mean you could have an incredible season. You didn't win the Masters. You could still be disappointed about that. People are still going to talk about who won the Masters. Winning the majors matters. Ricky hasn't been winning the majors. And he won Ulti World Disc Golf's Player of the Year award last year. He might win it again this year. It's very possible. But he still hasn't won a major this season. And, if Macbeth goes on to win USDGC, I mean, he's going to win Player of the Year if he does that. But, don't sit here and tell me that you didn't want to win the World Championships. Or that we all saw you put your head down on the fence for 30 seconds when you missed that eagle putt. So, I get it. I get the point. He has some legitimate complaint about the fact that we call it world champion. But, it's just the most important major. And I think, it comes across as a little sour to be talking about that right after Worlds. But I will also give him credit and say he came out, he won GMC, Macbeth didn't podium, and he overtook him in the Pro Tour standings back at number 1.
And he did.
I mean, isn't it funny? It's like when players are advocating for more long courses on tour because they're long throwers, or they want more woods courses because they're not long throwers. Everybody has their self-interest in mind. I mean, Macbeth tweets in response to the Ricky comments, this is like a regular season MVP award. They had a great year, but didn't show up when it counts. Sometimes MVPs win the championship, but not always. Also, Player of the Year fits this mold as well. Well, what do you know? Macbeth downplaying these other things when he's the guy that wins the majors, but hasn't been as consistent.
I think one point that's interesting, though, and that has to be considered, is that Macbeth could literally, it's same thing like Sexton. Macbeth could just play the majors, win all 4 majors, and he probably would not care about another tournament in the year. And it's just not true with Ricky, right? You can't say, like you mentioned, you can't say that this GMC win, if he had the option to trade GMC for Worlds, that he wouldn't trade it for Worlds or USDGC or any other event, right?
Of course.
That or any other major. Of course he would. Of course he would. And so that's the other kind of weird thing that, Ricky keeps saying these things that already is harder for people to swallow, right? It already doesn't feel quite right because he's trying to sell you something. But it feels like, Macbeth is speaking from and gets to talk from the position of power in a sense, because he is the one who's winning world championships. He is the one who's winning majors. He's the one who's contending for majors week in and week out. And so, Ricky's
won 17 majors and Ricky's won 5.
And yeah, right? I don't know. And it's difficult for me then. It would be something else if Macbeth got up and said, I don't think the world championship is a correct title. I also don't think it's the right format.
I wouldn't have a problem with them changing the name.
Yeah. And that's that. There's an argument there to be made. I don't know if I fully agree, but that's fine. Anyway, it's not the debate that I right now. But if Macbeth got up and said, I don't think the world championship is the most important major, I don't think it should be distinguished as such, I think, whatever, and says all these things that Ricky is saying, it comes from a very different place.
Yeah. I mean, I will say Macbeth does the same thing. He
does.
He gets up at the beginning of the season and he tells you how he's going to, he's been working so hard in the off season and he's so focused this year. And then when he starts playing bad or not winning at the regular season events, he's like, well, I didn't care that much. I didn't really have the kind of off season I wanted to have. I mean, it's like clockwork. Yeah. Right? Players hype themselves up where they're being successful and they downplay where they're not. I get it. This is the champion's mindset. You want to juice yourself up, and both Paul and Ricky are having great seasons. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just true, and maybe not iconic seasons like we've seen from them in the past. They both had seasons like that, but I think it's still very clear that it's all about how you want to draw the lines. And the nice thing about disc golf in an individual sport is that we can draw lots of different lines. We can talk about the points champion. We can talk about the world champion. We can talk about who won the most majors. We can talk about who won the most tournaments. We have all of these various ways to discuss the players, and you can decide for yourself what you think is most important. But everybody wants to add the X to their signature. Sorry. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Make sure you check out Pound's Custom Pack Builder, where you can customize every aspect of the bag, from the upper fabric, the lower fabric, the zippers, the sliders, the cords. You can get an Octothorpe, an Octahall, a toolbox, or even a Carlton in custom options. And stay tuned, Rufus Customs coming soon. Go to PoundDiscGolf.com to check out the Custom Pack Builder today.
Sunset Lake CBD is a hemp farm located just outside of Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake produced milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and in 2019, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD. Sunset Lake CBD believes that their farm-table approach is the best way for you to get responsibly produced, high-quality CBD products that actually work. Sunset Lake CBD craft topicals, gummies, oils, and more to help with stress, aches, and sleep. I was on vacation in Salt Lake this last week, and for some reason, I just never sleep well in hotel rooms. I hate being away from my own bed. I never find the pillows to be that comfortable, and it's never like the right temperature. I always now travel with my Sunset Lake CBD gummies that have melatonin in them, and I sleep so much better than I ever did before thanks to Sunset Lake CBD. Check them out today at sunsetlakecbd.com and use coupon code UPSHOT for 20% off all products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer-owned, Vermont-grown.
Welcome back to the Upshot. So it is another dominant win for Kristin Tattar. She wins by 7 strokes over Henna Blomroos and continues to pile up the 1,000 rated rounds. She averaged 1,006 this weekend. Her World Championships win actually was revised upwards to a 1,007 rating over the 5 rounds. She is now, Josh, shot her 5 best ever rated rounds in the last month of her career. She's on another level right now.
She's on another level. I'm excited to see what the ratings update looks like, especially if she plays MVP well, because MVP will be our last ratings tournament for this season. No, we corrected that. Disc Golf Pro Tour Championships do count for ratings because the individual round formats are standard. For this month, at least, this will be the last tournament of the month before our ratings update in October. I am really excited to see where Kristin Tattar is. I expect that she has to be in the low 990s at that point. Depending on what rounds drop off, it may be even higher. I really hope that Kristin Tattar can continue to play at this level, because how exciting would it be for Kristin Tattar to become the first 1,000 rated woman?
I mean, it was big time hype when Paige was getting close. And I think Kristin's certainly going to have the chance. I mean, this season, she's averaged over 1,000 at a tournament 4 times out of her 10 total Elite Series and major tournaments. Now, round ratings are round ratings are round ratings. You don't get a bonus for doing them at Elite Series and majors. And I think she did have some spots where she didn't play particularly well, like, some random C tier. She shot a 955 rating. Now, ultimately that's probably just a round or two, so it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. I think what you're seeing is that, if she can sustain the level of play that she's at right now, she will have an opportunity to do it. But the margins are thin. It's not like she's averaging 10, 15 ratings. She's just over 1,000, and she has been for 3 tournaments in a row. So you're right. This next update could be pretty interesting.
She does have a lot of rounds still at the 950, 960 mark. And those it just takes a lot to overcome, right? But last October, she has 2 rounds that were 950 and 956 that should be dropping off by the end of the season. So she also loses. So here are the 2 tournaments I expect her to lose and get dropped off. She has the Pro Forester, sponsored by Latitude 64, where she shot 2 991 rated rounds and 1 1001 rated round. And that was last September.
So that's having a positive impact right now.
That's having a positive impact. And then there's the Yulme Open, also sponsored by Latitude 64, that she shot 950 and 956. I think those are having outsized impact as compared to those other rounds that are helping her. So maybe all 5 of those should drop off by the end of October.
I don't quite know what the decay function is, but
I don't either.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think 990 is a reasonable expectation given where things stand right now. And then, can you keep it up and then hold on to all those rounds into next year? And if you can come out of the gates hot, you might get there. You really might. I mean, Paige had that chance, and Kristin may as well. So, at the end of the day, it was a good battle between her and Henna once again. It was close at the start of the round, but Henna gave up all 7 strokes, right? It was tied going into the final round, and Henna gave up all 7 strokes in the final round. It's very similar to what happened at Worlds, where the putter was just a problem. It was a problem. She 3-putted on hole 8, took a double bogey, and that kind of started to take her out of it. Then she didn't birdie again until 13. And then the triple bogey on 16, which was OB driven, not putting driven. That's, then it was over. But, Henna obviously has a path towards championship disc golf, and it's going to require work on the putter in the off season. But literally, no one's throwing it better. We talked about it in our Rapid React show. Her strokes gained tee to green numbers are just out of this world right now. But she's losing strokes to the average player on tour right now on the green.
So one question for you. I know that we've talked about, when we talk about the Europeans, it's usually been Evelina talked about over Henna.
Sure.
But as of late, it really feels like Henna has been playing better than Evelina.
Oh, definitely.
Now, right. I mean, in the standings, Evelina is still ahead of Henna, 12-16. Evelina did have the better performance at the European Open, but then you have Henna, who is, and Evelina was second at DMC.
To be honest,
so I guess it's only been the past couple weeks.
That's the thing. It's really since Worlds. I mean, Evelina coming into Worlds was the player that people expected, besides Kristin, to challenge Paige and Katrina. And she was, Henna was not particularly good for the first half of this season. But Worlds and then these last, 3-4 weeks, certainly Henna's been more impressive. I mean, their putting is similar, but Henna's just throwing it better than Evelina right now, which is saying something because Evelina's also still throwing it quite well.
Yeah. Who do you think has the higher ceiling?
Gosh, I think Henna. Ceiling. I think sort of steady expectation of average. I think Evelina's still the better sort of week in, week out player. But I
Sure.
think you're seeing right now why Henna has crazy ability to be like one of the greats, but has so much work to do on the mental side of the game. And we've talked about it before, but she's in her young 20s. She's very young. She's almost a decade younger than Kristin Tattar. There's plenty of time for her to get there, but I think she has the higher ceiling. Yes.
Yeah, I think Henna's got the higher ceiling. She's also got the lower floor, though.
Yes.
Yeah,
and we've seen
that's
that.
Like
We've seen that this season, right?
Yep. Yeah, we have. And I'm interested. Who do you think, then this will be my second question. Who do you think can fix the putting woes first? Henna or Evelina?
Henna.
Think Henna does. Ooh, okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. I don't know if I agree with that. I think Evelina might be able to fix them first. So interesting. Okay. I think this is just so fascinating to talk about. And I love that if you look over an FPO, 4 of your top 10, now top 10's a little outsized, it's, top 11 because a couple of ties at ninth, but 4 of those are European players, including first and second place.
I mean, it's crazy. I just went over to the UDisc stats page and sorted by from worst to best in Circle 1 putting. And Evelina's 3rd worst on tour, Henna's 5th worst on tour. And they're down there with, well, there are some other notable players up there. Like, there's a bunch of names you've never heard. And then you've got Juliana Korver is dead last, 51%. Kona Panis is down there. Rebecca Cox is down there. Jen Allen is down there. All players that we know struggle a lot with the putter at times, or all the time in some cases. So, I think both of them obviously only really have up to go. It can't get worse from here.
And then you have Owen Scoggins.
Oh my God.
Who is 5% above Valerie Mondahano in Circle 1 and C1X, and has 11% on Ellie Bryant and 9% on Ellie Bryant and 11% on Heather Young, Katrina Allen for Circle 2%. She's 84 and 32 in her putting stats.
I mean, these are this is what the future of FPO putting will eventually look like, I think. When you look at the MPO side of things, like 32 is a great number. Like the top players are in the high 30s. Circle 1 putting, the best players are around 90%. Owen Scoggins is not far off, right? She would be a well above average MPO putter. And she is taking the putting ability this season and putting together some of her best, her best disc golf of her career is being played right now. It's happening. She is now up at the top of the highest rated players in the world. She's on the podium again this weekend. Again, after having kind of a disastrous opening round at Brewster.
Yeah.
And she just...
Which is where she should have played better.
Yeah, I mean, it's you wonder what would happen if she'd had a good start.
Yep.
But, I mean, she's just such great energy, and, I mean, it's been very cool to watch her. Feel like we're watching her get better every week.
It's really exciting. And it's funny because, I think there was an email, and I'll let Charlie, I know you feel really strongly about this, so I'll let you, and we're going to talk more about this on Thursday, but I'll kick this email over to you real fast. We had an email, and I'll pull up who it was from, that I think it was Harper. Yeah. Harper says that, and I think Harper does a better job of qualifying it than a lot of other takes that I've seen. But Harper says, is it odd that we have right now one FPO player who's truly in form, and then everyone else we talk about is just inconsistent, right? Whether for whatever reason, we're talking about other players in the backdrop, and we're even doing that right now. Kristin wins. She wins by 7 strokes. It's another incredible performance from Kristin. She's going to hit 1,000 rated. Let's talk about all these kind of jostling behind her and the reasons why there's that jostling. Owen Scoggins putts really well. Henna can't putt, but she throws great, etc., etc. But I think one of the takes that we've been seeing a lot And Harper says, whatever the heck is going on with Paige and Katrina. And so that is I think the best take I've heard so far about that situation. But there's been a lot of people, Charlie, who say that, Kristin is the undisputed best FPO player that we have in the division. I'm going to let you give your thoughts because there's been a lot of chatter about that.
Well, people are saying Paige is washed. Paige will never win another world championship. Paige will never win another major. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, this is clown stuff, folks. I don't like Kristin has clearly had the best season in FPO this year at this point. And certainly she's been absolutely fantastic since the Des Moines Challenge. Just tremendous. And has, played well throughout this entire season. Has yet to miss the podium at an Elite Series or a major. That level of consistency is almost as impressive as the wins that she's been piling up. But the idea that somehow, this is just get used to it. Kristin Tattar is going to be like this forever. She's going to be winning all these tournaments by 7 strokes. This is the same stuff people used to say about Paige 2 years ago. It is not, you don't play your absolute best all the time. And look, if we go into 2023 and Kristin does win all the tournaments by 7 strokes and it's like rare for her to lose, I'll come back and I'll eat my hat. But look, Paige is not playing well right now. If you think that means that Paige is just never going to play well again and that she's washed up, you are a clown who is not paying attention to disc golf for the last decade. She's the greatest player to ever play it. She throws further than Kristin. Now, look, Paige needs to learn how to throw forehand. This is clear to me. I think it's something she's probably going to work on in the offseason. But the idea that Kristin has forever cemented herself as the greatest of all time in FP, I mean, stop it. Stop it. She's played well for a month. You wouldn't even say this before this last month. Like, if you could go back to July, Kristin was hurt. Kristin missed European Open. Kristin, had played well for sure, was the most consistent player, but she didn't have as many wins as Paige. Paige beat her at Champions Cup. I don't know. People are just absolutely ridiculous with the takes after 2 weeks of good play. And it takes nothing away from Kristin, who's been phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yes.
And I think that her well-rounded game is playing extremely well on the courses we've been playing lately.
Yeah.
But it drives me insane to watch people talk about how Paige is done. No, she's not. I would bet a large sum of money that Paige will win more majors next year.
We're going to talk about best rounds of all time, or best seasons of all time in FPO on Thursday. But just a little teaser for the Paige Pierce discussion. 2018 Paige Pierce had a stretch from Las Vegas to Masters that she won 6 tournaments in a row.
Yes.
First place. In 2019, I'll list off the tournaments that Paige won: Nick Hyde, Jonesboro, Portland, Beaver State, Ledgestone, D-Glow, Idlewild, Worlds, MVP Open, and took second at Hall of Fame Classic, U.S. Women's, Canadian Nationals, Masters Cup, San Francisco, GBO, and the Memorial.
By the way, she was playing against Kristin, Evelina, and Hannah most of that season. That was 3 years ago, folks. It's up there with some of the best seasons of all time.
Which we'll talk about. But
I will give the people who are hyping up Kristin, which she deserves the hype. She's been phenomenal. Acknowledge correctly that this is the deepest and best FPO field that we've had. 100% true.
Yes. And
you get more credit for beating a better field. But this has not been to the level of dominance as we've seen from past seasons. So we will do some comparisons on Thursday.
Yep. In the meantime, though, we just finished our first playoff event of the new Disc Golf Pro Tour playoff series. We talked a little bit about this in the Worlds discussion with Ricky. But Charlie, overall, how do you feel about this playoff format? We're one tournament down, going into the next. We'll have a break, and then we've got Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship.
Yeah, we kind of trim down the fields. We go to get towards the Tour Championship. Do I like it? The cuts, I'm okay with it. I think it's fine.
Okay.
I don't think it's particularly dramatic. I think I almost would prefer a more aggressive cut. I understand why you don't want to do that necessarily, but I think that the idea that this is somehow like higher stakes disc golf because it's the playoffs now, I'm not sure that holds water for me. I didn't get that feeling from the disc golf this weekend. Just felt like an Elite Series tournament.
I think you're right that you need a more aggressive cut. Here's one argument that I'll make. I don't think GMC and MVP should be your playoff events. There's too much weight already around them as Elite Series events. I think you should have 3 tournaments that are your disc golf playoff events, make them new events. I don't care what they are, make them, and Des Moines Challenge could be one of them. It could be an excellent playoff event. And then with if you do playoff challenge or Des Moines Challenge, I don't know, something in Georgia or wherever, and then the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship. If you talk to the TDs in advance, you offer them the kind of logistical support and say, your tournament is going to feature 60 MPO and 40 FPO, and it's going to get cut aggressively by round 2 and then aggressively again by round 3 for the Pro Tour Championship, then I think the playoffs have stakes and some weight to it. And it takes tournaments that otherwise, like Des Moines Challenge was good, and I paid attention, especially because of the payout. But if you took Des Moines Challenge and made that a playoff event and marketed it as such and then had aggressive cuts, I think that would be an excellent area where you could institute new events and add some weight to them without just them being new events on tour. The problem is they're never going to do that to MVP.
No, they're not. And they're also, you talk about logistics, like the logistics of the travel scheme don't really work out very well.
No, but
so like I understand why they did this the way that they did. No, I get the point. I mean, I think part of the calculus here is probably that they wanted to tighten up the number of players who are at MVP because it's a lot easier to get a smaller number of players through that course.
Maybe.
And it makes it a little easier to have the tee times that you want and everything. So
Sure.
I mean, I'm fine with it. I think that the marketing of the playoffs outstrips the actual sort of like intrigue that's happening with players moving in the standings.
Yeah.
But I think it's fine. I think it's cool to have the idea that like these have some extra weight and that you do have an opportunity. Mm-hmm. We talked about it before, right? The Woods players have a chance to make their moves with some bonus points on the line.
Yeah.
Speaking of players making changes, let's talk about who got in, who's out, and where we are as we head into MVP. So reminder, you had to be top 72 MPO or top 36 FPO in order to get an automatic qualification into the MVP Open. So we'll start down at the bubble of getting into MVP. Shout out to Jake Mon, Austin Turner, and Silas Schultz, who all moved up into the top 72 and managed to earn their spot at MVP. Robert Burridge, John Willis, both dropped out of their spot. Over in FPO, Hannah Wynn got in past Ellen Widboom, who was not active this past weekend. And Lekka Lorenzen also able to earn her spot at MVP. At the bubble for the Tour Championship, which is perhaps a more interesting one to look at, Josh, who's in now and who dropped out?
Yeah, Connor O'Reilly was able to sneak into the play-in tournament, has a good chance to hold that at MVP this weekend, especially because Nate Sexton is most likely going to drop out this week. He is not playing at MVP, and he is reaching down at the bubble. He dropped down into the play-in tournament.
Yeah, he's at 36 right now, and is probably going to fall out.
Almost certainly going to fall out. On the FPO side, Kona Panis dropped out of play-in and is now sitting on the outside looking in for the Pro Tour Championship. She is going to need to pass Jennifer Allen, Lisa Fakis, Jessica Weiss, Holland Hanley, Hannah Blumroos, or Haley King. Haley King is the only one not playing this event. So Kona Panis needs 30 points in order to pass Haley King. Now, there are some people behind Kona that could pass her hypothetically. Macy Vela Diaz, for example, is at 507 and Kona's at 520. That one is going to be interesting to watch to see who gets the final FPO spot. I anticipate it's all pretty well locked up except for that final spot that Haley King is going to lose. I'm interested to see who gets it.
Yeah. Kona finished 34th this weekend. It's been a pretty tough stretch for Kona, and she's now on the outside looking in. Although technically, I don't think Haley's planning to play GMC or the Tour Championship, even if she has a spot. So I think you're right, Josh, that Haley's going to probably drop out anyway. But Kona's going to have like a solid weekend. And Macy only needs to finish a couple spots ahead of Kona to take that spot from her. So that's going to be like a key thing to be watching at MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your folks who like moved into guaranteed spots. You had Evelina Salonen move up from the play-in into the guaranteed spot. By the way, Henna Blomroos also moved up into the play-in. I think she's going to have a really good chance to be all the way up into the qualified section. She's going to have to pass Emily Beach, Alexis Mondahano, Evelina, Maria Oliva. Probably those are the players that she'd be looking to try to get past. Other players that got a guaranteed spot now, Nicholas Antila, Greg Barsby, both have a locked up spot in the Tour Championship at the moment. And what else? For the play-in on the MPO side.
We had some people move into, yeah.
Yeah, Chandler Kramer moved up and into a play-in spot. And Jeremy Colling dropped down from qualified back into the play-in. So
on the FPO side, Henna moved up into the play-in, as you mentioned. Jen Allen also moved up into the play-in tournament.
And the last thing to take a look at is who's sitting on buys. Isaac Robinson is now getting a bye to quarterfinals. He moved up into the 16th spot after finishing tied for second. And Kevin Jones dropped out of his semis bye. Matty O took his spot in the semis bye. So Kevin Jones currently sitting on a bye to quarters. He'll certainly have a chance to take that back from Matty O, but he's going to have to play better than he did this weekend. Matty O is second. Kevin Jones was 22nd.
Mm-hmm. Couple of quick hitters on some of our over-unders. I had the over of Kevin Jones falling out, so feeling really good about that one. Charlie, you took the under for Casey White, who missed the cut at GMC for the first time in his
having
career.
A great start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He now needs 50 points to pass a handful of people. He's got to pass 8 people in order to get up, and 6 of those 8 people, Nate Sexton and Eagle McMahon being the exceptions, are playing in MVP.
He's going to have to like podium probably and have those guys not do that well. I mean, it's not just about getting the 50 points. It's about those guys not getting a lot of additional points.
Nico is also not in, though, so there are 2 spots, really, Nate Sexton's and Nico's up for grabs. So you really are a little further down when you look at.
Well, keep in mind, Eagle, if he wants it, gets a spot, and that means it'll only go to 35, not 36, for the players who get to be in the play-in tournament.
That is true. Yeah, that'll be an interesting question. On the FPO side, Henna Blomroos, I took the under on her getting into the play-in tournament, feeling good about that one. This is, I think, actually the most interesting point on FPO right now. Valerie Mondahano, Charlie, you have the over of her staying outside or falling outside and not getting the bye to semis. And FPO is interesting right now because you are correct. But Valerie did fall out. Owen has moved into the 4th slot, But what's interesting right now is Katrina Allen's spot is also up for grabs. Katrina Allen missing the cut, ending the longest cash streak in FPO, with her missing out on cash this weekend. She now sits at 946 points. Owen Scoggins is at 911, and Valerie is at 904. It's a long ways. It's 40-point difference, but it was a 50-point difference for Valerie and Katrina this weekend. So
yeah, I mean,
it'll be interesting.
Valerie outscored Katrina by 50 points. Owen outscored Katrina by 63 points this weekend. So, I mean, if Katrina plays as poorly as she did this weekend, again at MVP, she could lose her bye, which is pretty crazy considering, you know, how strongly she was in that spot earlier this season.
Yeah, we were talking about even last week, we were like, those three are pretty locked in, right? There's not going to be any drama for those three spots.
It's just kind of crazy. Like, Katrina had hardly missed the top 5 for the entire season. And then 6th at Deglow, 7th at Ledgestone, 11th at DMC, 11th at Worlds, 24th at GMC. Mechanically, something's not right. Like, when you watch her throw, the mechanics don't look right. And that's a tricky thing to get past. But I think that's probably what's causing a lot of the issues right now for Katrina.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. But those are kind of the recap of what to watch this weekend. The TLDR is watch the Kona Macy Valadiaz battle.
Oh, yeah.
Watch the podium, especially, and where Katrina Allen finishes. And then the Matty O KJ for the final spot in MPO. Those are the big ones that I think you're going to want to watch this weekend.
Also want to note, this doesn't really matter for the Tour Championship, but Ricky is back to number 1. He passed Paul Macbeth. And Kristin Tattar is now at number 1 after passing Paige Pierce this weekend.
By 60 points. 65 points.
Yeah, I mean,
incredible.
Paige is just not sharp right now. And Kristin is as sharp as we've ever seen her. So that's where things stand. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you Thursday to get you ready for the MVP Open, the $1 Million Ace Challenge, and we will also talk about greatest FPO seasons of all time. Is Kristin having one of them? We'll discuss Thursday. Talk to you then.